Welcome back to the Shacknews Awards. We are just handing out all sorts of great awards to different game developers, games, people, all sorts of stuff, even animals in games. But this category is the best early access game of the year 2024. This is a little different of a category because I think you can still be an early access game like that's in early access that wasn't released this year and you could still be in this category, or you're an early access game that launched into early access this year. So you can be eligible one of two ways for this category. Those are the two ways. Uh, and yeah, for the most part, you see these games on PC first, but we mentioned it off camera, but like Xbox and PlayStation have kind of created ways to release games on their platforms in early access. So that's not necessarily just a PC Steam focused award anymore. But here are the nominees. We'll get them out there. We'll talk about them, and then we will vote and give the award to someone. Path of Exile 2, Hades 2, The Rogue Prince of Persia, Deadlock, Delta Force, and Windblown, with an honorable mention to Lockdown Protocol. Those are the nominees. David, I know you've been playing Path of Exile 2 quite a bit over the past weekend, and as like a Diablo expert, curious what you think. What are your initial thoughts on Path of Exile 2?
Yeah, Path of Exile 2 came out pretty recently at the time of our recording here. And I went into this expecting another, Diablo 2 or 3. But what I got is a really, really addictive cross between Diablo and Souls, I would say. This is a very active, very action-packed action RPG. Unlike most of them, you can't just sit there and attack or shoot spells from one position. You have to be constantly moving. There's actually a dodge button, which is rolling, so Souls fans will feel right at home because there are iframes. This game is really, really challenging. The difficulty curve can be steep. It goes up pretty sharply every new area, but I've found that if I at least clear every area I'm in, I'm ready for the next one. There are a ton of playable classes, a ton of class customization. I'm playing a witch, and she is basically the necromancer from Diablo 2 or 3. I have a lot of summons with me, so my party's rolling deep. The graphics are great, the story is great, the voice acting is great. I actually find myself paying attention to the story more in this game than I typically do in games of this type. And I've just had a blast with it. I've uploaded some videos for the rest of my editors here to take a look at, and I'm loving it. I can't wait to get back to playing it.
Nice.
I love that there are different classes that like feel different and almost make it feel like you're playing a different game. Because David went witch, I went mercenary before early access came out, and mercenary plays like you're playing a twin stick shooter. And I think that makes the game feel a little different too. So there's a lot of versatility in how you can approach Path of Exile 2, and I think it's awesome. They're starting out big with like 50 bosses out there, and they've added a whole end game to it, and they want to double the size of this by the time it goes 1.0. So good luck to them, but what they've got right now is solid.
I think it's cool that they're like upfront about the whole end game process that they're working on, where they're like, "Look, we realize our end game in PoE 1 wasn't the best," and they didn't really take a direct dig at Diablo, but they kind of did. Diablo.
No, they loved their end game in PoE 1, but they realized that they're like, well, people are going to judge PoE 2 on that, and if we don't have a good end game, then we got nothing. So we need to work on that now, and
that's actually the interesting thing. One of the interesting things about this is that it's not just that they're doubling the game. In early access, there are only 2 acts. So they have an end game for what is early access, but then by the time it hits 1.0, the rest of the game will be in play, which does approximately double it. So it's not like when they hit 1.0, it'll be like an expansion pack or something. It's just the rest of the game. And I did, to Ozzy's point, I really want to try the mercenary because I've heard that's how it plays, like a twin stick shooter. I also tried the ranger, which is an archer, and a warrior. And man, melee classes are tough to play in this game. It's a lot like Souls, where the magic classes start out stronger because you don't have to be in everybody's face to deal damage. You're gonna be, I would say, if you want the best Souls-like experience, try a melee class. You're gonna be spending half your time attacking, half your time dodging, just rolling around like a madman, which again should make Souls players feel right at home.
There is a dodge roll.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and you have to use it.
What you're saying is it's the Dark Souls of isometric RPGs.
Nope.
Overruled.
Overruled. I will hold you in contempt if you say that again.
That's your box quote.
No. Nope. I told you, sir. I will hold you in contempt if you continue to say such things. You've got me so upset that my headphones fell off. There we go. Anyway, yeah. No, I think it was a very worthy nominee. I'm glad we waited to do these deliberations specifically for this category because Path of Exile 2 is great. And we've been covering it pre-early access launch. We covered Path of Exile 1 pretty intensely. So yeah, it's good to see it here, and I think a very worthy nominee. I'm just happy to see David back in that genre, having a good time.
It's definitely not a game you can play as mindlessly. So if you're used to relaxing with Diablo, I would say if you're a Diablo fan and you have to play Diablo 4, play this and Diablo 4 because they are really two different types of experiences that can scratch two different itches in the same genre.
Mm-hmm. I think the challenges are why you're coming back to it, though. It's like, hey, this is actually hard. Which I think is more rewarding than just repetitively clicking on things. I'm not saying that's what Diablo 4 is. I'm saying that's how Elon Musk plays Diablo 4. Donovan, or sorry, who here played Hades 2 this year?
A little bit of it.
Yeah, I thought you did, Donovan. Any thoughts on Hades 2?
I mean, it's great. It's just a good, fun roguelike. Kind of feels a lot like the first game, but just with new characters, new monsters, new abilities and weapons. I don't recall the name of the new protagonist, but I like her a bunch.
And there's like that new hub world too, right? Or
yeah.
It's like it's not the same story as Hades, but it like echoes a lot of the original.
Yeah. Yep. And they've already dropped, I believe, a couple like major updates just within like the early access window since it first went up earlier this year to now.
This was a surprise drop too, right? We didn't know it was coming, and then they were like, "Bam, here's Hades 2."
They had announced they were working on it, but I think when we learned we were going to be able to play in early access, I'm pretty sure that was like a short window between when they announced it and when we got it.
It was like a week, which was cool. And then this other one, the Rogue Prince of Persia, that was also kind of a surprise. I don't think anyone knew this was coming. We got Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown earlier in the year, and then what, like 2 months later, Ozzy?
It wasn't even 2 months later, I don't think. And I think that's part of why it was such a surprise. It's like, you guys literally just released a Prince of Persia game, and now you're saying you're going to come out with one in early access from the team that did the Dead Cells DLCs. And it's awesome. I absolutely love this game. And I think part of what stands out for me is part of it is the art style, which makes it look like a Tintin comic come to life. And another part of it is like how they approach that Hades style storytelling, but in different ways. Like, you'll go through some of these stages and you'll come across like an NPC and they'll be like, "Oh, I learned what the enemy is planning. You have to go here and you have to go look for this." And it requires you to like take a different path when you do your next playthrough to like kind of keep the story going. There are different things that it experiments with. The combat is really solid. The bosses are really cool. And I unfortunately haven't played the most recent update because the most recent update kind of turned everything on its head. Like, they added a robust update where they updated just about everything, and I have not touched the game since, but I have been meaning to go back. What I have played so far, though, absolutely incredible. Absolutely great stuff from Evil Empire.
Yeah. And Ubisoft, remembering that Prince of Persia is a pretty sweet IP. How about that? TJ, I know you're kind of infatuated with Deadlock. How are you feeling about it now? You still feeling it?
Still feeling it. Like, I have been playing MOBAs for more than a decade. I was big into League of Legends about 10 years ago before I decided that it was bad for my mental health, and then I stopped. And that's usually the case with a lot of these games because MOBAs grind you down when they're not when after a certain point, like if you're not there's just a culture around them where like people get so mad so fast because these games last so long, and if you don't understand your character or the objectives, then your team is probably going to be just completely hobbled right out of the gate. Deadlock isn't easy. It still is a MOBA. It's still like there is a lot to learn about it, but it also has a lot of options to not play in like competitive spaces. You can take a hero into like a full-on training mode and figure out how they work. You can take them into NPC versus bots. You can take them into. There's a few other modes where like you can just try things out and get your feet wet and understand like what you're doing in a low pressure, low stress environment. And then when you get to like the main game, it's one of the most interesting setups I've seen for a MOBA so far. Just because like it starts with like you get 4 lanes, which is usually 3 lanes in any given MOBA. But like there's this zip line thing to it, where every lane you can like go back and forth up and down like the lane as far as you have control of it. Like if your minions are pushed down a lane, then you can use the zip line to get to where the minions are on the front line. And I think that's an excellent time saver for a game like this, because getting from base out to where the action is always kind of a slog in these games. And then it's just like it's a shooter before it's like a point and click, which I know Paragon did that before, but I feel like Valve has a better handle on this kind of thing because they've been creating great shooting physics for years. And the characters they've created for this game are fun to use. Like, I enjoy using Shiv, who is like a bleed over time character that can like kill enemies under a certain, like he can assassinate characters once their health is low enough. But like there are other characters in this game, like the Viscous, who is like just straight up a jelly person, and they can create like little piles of goo on walls and surfaces and make fists just pop out of them and punch you. Or they can turn into a cube and just completely negate damage for a bit. And I think like that's another part of Valve that is just works so well for this genre, is that they're good at making characters that are fun to look at and fun to play.
I think a lot of their learnings from Team Fortress and Dota 2 are kind of showing up here. Yeah, I enjoy watching Deadlock more than I do playing it, but it's undeniable that it's like faster paced than a lot of those other attempts at a third person MOBA. Yeah, it's about time. I like when Valve makes games.
Yep.
All out. We should encourage them to make more games. Maybe with the number 3 at the end of them.
It'll never happen. That's crazy talk.
I'm just talking about Portal 3, guys. Not the end of the world. Bill, there's a game on this list that came out this year, and when I saw the trailer, I'm like, oh, that's a Bill Lavoie game right there. Delta Force, formerly known as Delta Force Hawk Ops. They dropped the Hawk Ops, and they're just calling it Delta Force now.
Yeah.
This game released earlier this year into early access. It's one part Battlefield-like game and one part extraction shooter, right, Bill?
Yes. So it's essentially 2 full video games in one. It had a PC technical test earlier this year that lasted for over a month, actually. They kept extending it. And what was most impressive to me is, well, there's a few things that are impressive to me, but even when there were only 2 maps to play and like a handful of operators, so like you're only looking at a slice of the game, right? There wasn't a ton of it. It was enough to keep those who were playing it engaged. And the feedback from the community was, just send it like this. We're good. Just send it. This is fine. We don't need more maps. This is all we needed. I think I played like 90 some hours in the month that it was out in the technical test. Unfortunately, that was like a different Steam instance, so I can't actually go back and look at my playtime for that because it's gone. But it was like 90 something hours that I played. It's scratching an itch for a certain segment of first-person shooter fans that just didn't have something to do this, because there's always been your COD fans and there's always been your Battlefield fans, and there's obviously some crossover there, but there's a group of folks who just really want Battlefield, and I feel like over the last almost decade, Battlefield has struggled to really satisfy those people consistently. Like sometimes they get there a few years after launch, but Battlefield 3, I would say, was the last real hurrah for the Battlefield franchise where everybody was like playing on a nightly basis. Like I used to play that game every night with my buddies. This is the first game that's come along that's given that back to me. Like every single night, it's not like, what are we going to play? It's like, what time are we playing Delta Force? It's just a total change, and it's filling a void that has been left for quite a long time. So it does have that Battlefield feel, but better executed than Battlefield, even in a technical test and even in an open beta, than Battlefield has been in a decade. And then on top of that, there's lots of people who are into extraction shooters. And for a very long time, like kind of like the number one simulation shooter, extraction shooter was Tarkov. And we've seen that get some competition this year. Gray Zone Warfare came out, and there was another one as well that the name is escaping me. But this is just a full-fledged extraction shooter that is competitive with something like Tarkov that's been out for years and years and years. And it's just the other half of this already, like this video game. It could have just been that, and it would have been a full video game that you could have just played an extraction shooter. But this actually manages to sort of marry the extraction shooter with the Battlefield type FPS mode. You can stick to one or the other, but a lot of times you get progression with certain things by like dabbling in one or dabbling in the other one. It's got multiple maps for each of those modes. I don't even know how many maps. I couldn't tell you how many maps. I don't think I played the same map twice last night, to give you an example. I just can't. It's not just the content that's on offer. It feels so good. The vehicle warfare is so good. The destruction is good. The operators are interesting in what they do. The weapon configuration is absolutely bonkers. Like there's dozens of attachments. Like in some cases, you're looking at like 75 different attachments for a weapon. So you can sit there and fine tune every little bit of your weapon to get just a bit more stability or just a bit more range, or maybe you want better handling so you can aim down sight quicker. Whatever it is, you can find that perfect balance. Then you can take that weapon into a gun range and you can test it out. And then it's like, oh, okay, it doesn't quite feel right. You pop back out, you make some more adjustments to it. Absolutely amazing. I think I would be pretty shocked if the Battlefield player base doesn't take a huge dive based on this, because this has really filled a void, and it's only in beta right now.
So you brought up something about gun ranges and like a place to test weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that not an industry standard in FPS games at this point?
Is it in COD this year, Donovan? I can't remember.
What ability?
Like a shooting range.
Shooting range.
To just test weapons.
Okay, yeah. So it is in COD, but to your point, Asif, it's only now starting to become more common. I know that a lot of extraction shooters have had it in the past, but it seems to follow shooters which are very like more on the simulation side, where the engagements are extremely fast, right? In something like Tarkov or something like the extraction mode to Delta Force, like you don't have time to like test out in live engagements, because if you mess up, you're dead. It's over in an instant. Mm-hmm. It's not. So the shooting range is really good.
The game that comes to mind for me, where I was like, this is kind of weird that they have it, but I'm glad they put it in there, was Back 4 Blood. As like quite a good shooting range that I actually had more fun with than the game at times.
I think shooting ranges should be, to your point, like standard. Yeah, 100%. And
like, that should be something that developers are like, yeah, this is what we're doing going forward. Even in the first person game, I think there's, to your point, Bill, like if you're playing Doom or something, 2016 or Eternal, and like you run into a problem and you're trying to experiment with it in game, there's a trial and error that could be done in like a shooting range. I don't know.
And the shooting range is important because these maps are so big and they're so like varied in what it is that you can have a building which is almost like the engagements that take place in that building might be its own COD match. But outside of that building, you have tanks going at it. You have helicopters going at it. You have helicopters engaging tanks. If you're me, you have tanks shooting down helicopters. It's absolutely bonkers. But what it allows you to do is that you can play the way you want to play. If you want to be a sniper, you can sit, if that's your thing, back near the spawn and try to hit 700-meter headshots. If you want to be an anti-tank person, you can load up on rockets and you can chase down armor and you can try to take them out. If you want to be a medic, like you can play the way that you want to play and still be productive doing it, which is great.
To your point, these are 64-player matches, right? So there's like a lot of people in an instance doing stuff simultaneously.
Yep.
Cool. I think a very worthy nominee. I think it's an FPS game to watch going into 2025. I know they have a, I don't know if they're calling it single player, but they have a campaign DLC event or whatever you want to call it, dropping in January for Black Hawk Down. So yeah, I think they're actually injecting a little bit of narrative and story into this too, Bill. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a game to watch because like right now there's already a lot of stuff to do, but I have a feeling by the time it goes 1.0, there might even be more stuff.
Yeah. And I think as of right now, it's here to stay. So like we're in a beta, but I don't think there's no more resets to progression. Like this isn't a test. Like whatever you do now, like your progression sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure the game is here to stay. So it'll just eventually transition from beta to like live 1.0.
Nice. And then last but not least here we have Windblown, which is it's kind of similar to Hades, where it's like kind of an isometric I don't know what the best way, like they call it's an action roguelite, which I think is pretty interesting. It also features multiplayer. You can play with up to 3 people at once.
And also, it's our second representation of Dead Cells. This is OG developer Motion Twin.
Yes. So we're getting like they got nominated twice in this category. One for the Rogue Prince of Persia and
Rogue Prince of Persia was Evil Empire.
Oh, sorry.
Who did the DLCs?
Sorry, that's right. The Evil Empire did the DLC for Dead Cells. Motion Twin made the original Dead Cells. So this is like the next Motion Twin game, and it's not a side scroller. It's stylized as all hell. It just looks cool. It's like, hey, they made their own Hades and they created their own characters and stuff for it. But I think the DNA from Dead Cells that's present in this game is how fast it is and the dash mechanic and stuff. So yeah, another one to keep an eye on going into next year. Although the Motion Twin has shown in the past that they don't go 1.0 until they're very certain of it. And then if you look at all the stuff that has come to Dead Cells since launch, I think Windblown's going to be something that it may look completely different, or not, maybe not look, but it may have more stuff when it finally goes 1.0. But we should keep our eye on it this year. Okay, what do you guys say? You guys want to vote?
Yeah.
Sound like a plan? Okay. I'll start with Bill.
Delta Force.
Steve.
I'm going the Rogue Prince of Persia.
Okay. David.
Path of Exile 2.
Mm-hmm. This seems like one there's going to be votes all over the place. Donovan.
Path of Exile 2.
Maybe not. Denny.
Thanks. Yeah, I was going to show Path of Exile 2 some love to you. And David's won me over with that one. I'm going to hop in, give it some rolls out there. Got to watch some gameplay this weekend.
Yeah. Denny's eyes lit up when you said dodge roll.
Dodge roll.
He's like, wait a second. You're speaking my language. Greg.
Path of Exile 2.
Okay. TJ.
Locked in on Deadlock.
Yeah. Ozzy.
Hades.
Okay. Hades 2. And we're back to Bill. So I guess that leaves Sam. He voted for Delta Force, Bill. And my vote doesn't really matter here. I'm gonna vote. I'm gonna vote for Delta Force. I appreciate Path of Exile 2. I just don't think those games are really for me anymore. That's not really something I want to jump into. But Delta Force is like, it's got me like watching the Thursday streams or whatever, Bill, like when you guys are streaming with Jan. And yeah, like I have warm memories of the Battlefield days and Shack battles past. But also, like, I don't know, Bill, like, I think it was one of your first times working with Shacknews. We did like a Battlefield 4 stream. And you were flying a helicopter around and I was shooting people with a pistol. So,
Same feeling, man. It's back.
It sounds like it's even better than BF4, though.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, I digress. Delta Force did not win. Got some votes. I think it's fair to say all these games are worth keeping an eye on or trying out now. And early access is cool because you get to be a part of their improvement of the game. So the good companies that listen to feedback end up taking this early access period and making something great out of it. I think that's what PoE 2 is doing. I think we're going to see that with how Valve is handling Deadlock as well. All these games deserve some love. But there can only be one best early access game of the year 2024 here at the Shacknews Awards, and it is Path of Exile 2. Congratulations to Grinding Gear for their alliteration and their sweet game.